Hello and welcome once again to another episode on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. My name is Bob. In this episode I'm going to be making a card scraper. Now I like to do a bit of furniture restoration from time to time, and I take some of my inspiration from Keith Brown at Rag and Bone Brown, and I noticed that Keith uses a card scraper quite frequently on his furniture restoration projects, and I thought I'd like to give one a go. Of course, when you've got a metalworking workshop at your disposal, you don't go out and buy one, you just make one up. After all, it's just a rectangular of steel, isn't it? Well, it's not as simple as that, but anyhow, if you follow along in this video, I'll show you my little journey in making a card scraper, and I hope you enjoy. I will be making the card scraper out of an old circular saw blade, and I start by marking out a rectangle on the blade. I'm making this one 150 millimeters long by 75 millimeters wide, or 6 inches by 3 inches, but really you want a size that fits comfortably in your hands. One thing to note here is about the quality of the steel being used. This old blade is a high carbon steel one with teeth cut into the blade circumference. If you start with a modern tungsten tip blade, then beware the quality of steel in the body of the blade may not be as good, because there the tungsten tips are actually doing the cutting. I first clamped the saw blade to a bench. And then used a cutting disc in my 100mm or 4-inch grinder to cut out the rectangle of the saw blade to make the card scraper. My approach to using the cutting disc is to score a track along the line first, after which I do repeated runs along that track until the disc breaks through the other side. I find this is probably the quickest and easiest way to do this. I have found using a cutting disc like the blade of a chop saw really wears out the disc quickly, and also remembering that grinder is handheld, it can trap the disc with sometimes dramatic consequences. The thickness of this old saw blade is about 1.5 millimeters, but you could use this technique to cut a thinner section from, say, an old handsaw blade. I've sped up the video about 5 times here, but it doesn't take that long to cut the rectangle out of the old circular saw blade. Although I'm careful with the cut-off disc, the resulting cut is certainly not perfectly straight. With the rectangle cut out, I then move to the linisher, where I'm using a clamp as a holder to form up the sides of the card scraper. Here I'm starting the process of making each of the long sides perfectly straight, but not necessarily parallel, as well as smoothing the cut on the short sides. Next I move to a coarse oil stain to finish the edges on the long sides prior to sharpening. It does not show up that well in the video, but after the first few passes over the oilstone, I can see a series of light and dark sections along the edge. These correspond to hills and valleys, and they will need to be flattened to give a perfectly straight edge. It takes patience and a little bit of stonework, but I eventually end up with two perfectly flat long sides. At this point, I'm going to be sharpening the card scraper. Now, I will be honest here, totally honest, and say that everything I know about sharpening the card scraper, I learned from Cuffy at Cuffy's Woodwork. And I'll put a link up here somewhere which will take you to that video. Cuffy's pretty good at explaining this sort of stuff, and in his video goes to a lot of the theory as to what you're trying to achieve. So I've got my card scraper, and I have got 3 lots of sandpaper, 400 grit, 800 grit, 1200 grit. I've already got it down to quite an edge on the card scraper, if you look there. So I've got my block of wood, which has got 1 square side, and I'm using that to align the card scraper and keeping it square. And I'm just dragging it down, just getting it right. Through to the next one, and finally the 1200, at which point I turn it end on and just run it up and down. This one's pretty well there because it was already sharpened. However, Cuffy, in his video, he's bought both his card scraper and his burnishing tool. I'm not cheap, but I am thrifty, and I know a thing or two about metals. So this started life as a circular saw blade, quite an old circular saw blade, a nice piece of carbon steel, and I have here a number 3 Phillips head screwdriver. I know this screwdriver well. This is some 50 years ago that I bought it. So anyhow, what I can tell you is it was manufactured in Australia. It's made out of very good tool steel. We actually made things, we made quality things back then. Don't make much at all these days. And I know inherently that it'll be harder than the high carbon steel that formed this blade. And the simple reason, the simple explanation of this is you want a bit of give in your saw blade, because the last thing you want to do is have it shatter. I can imagine it would be like facing a ninja who's sort of doing all the star knives at your face. So you don't want it to shatter, so you've got to have it a bit of give, and that means it won't be as hard as the tool steel in the screwdriver. So I'm using this as my burnishing tool. I'm doing this as per the Gospel according to St. Cuffy. So I've got my burnishing tool. It's at a slight angle up from the plate and an angle back from the plate. And I'm giving 5 strokes. I think that was 5. And on the other side, okay, the next step is to bring our burrs over. So I'm forming 90 degrees between the burnishing tool, screwdriver, and the card scraper, and I'm running this way. I'll do a couple like that, and then I'm tipping my angle and going there, and likewise there, and I'll probably use a bit more pressure than Cuffy does. Not to worry, I think we'll still get there. I can actually feel the burr running along with my finger, but I don't have the camera gear that can show you the burr. So talking about Cuffy, he's also put up a new channel. It's focused on the technical aspects of woodworking, and it's well worth a look. The first video on Cuffy's Woodwork Tips and Talk channel is about wood grain direction and its importance in planing a surface. Seeing as the card scraper is a form of plane, I thought I would show you an example of planing against the grain and with the grain. Nice bit of tear out there, isn't there? Time to check the performance of the card scraper. First on a piece of Tassie oak. And then on a piece of pine. I'm pretty happy with the result. Nice. Well, I hope you enjoyed that video, and if you did, I'd welcome a thumbs up. Please share it widely. Share it with your friends. Share it with people who aren't your friends. Let everybody know. If you haven't already subscribed to White Dog Garage YouTube channel, then maybe you should. I make stuff, I fix stuff, I renovate stuff, and I maintain stuff. And there's always some interesting stuff to be found on the channel. So I would welcome your subscription if you haven't already subscribed, and if you do subscribe, think about dinging the bell so that you get a notification from YouTube the next time an episode comes out on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. Thank you once again for watching, and I look forward to talking to you next time. Bye.